Here we go. Thank you all for being here. I know it's complicated to be here after lunch. However, I see people still coming in. First of all, the name of my presentation is M.E.A.T. In order to play on words, make, environment, Android tools. This is what M.E.A.T stands for, M.E.A.T. So the idea is to create tools in order to make auditing process more agile and improved. This is what I'll be discussing with you here today. So the topics for my presentation is, first of all, an introduction, then auditing for mobile devices. I'm sure that a lot of people here have been mobile auditors. I'll talk about how auditing are conducted and the processes, and then I'll explain testing environment, which is most specifically for the tool we created, and some conclusions. Let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Paco Ramirez. I am an IT engineering. I have a master's degree in cybersecurity. I'm a PhD candidate for mobile application security at the University of Seville. I work for Innotech. They gave me the opportunity to be here with you today, actually, so thank them. And I've been working in pen testing for 4 years, and I make audits for mobile devices, but also for websites and hardware hacking, red team, and also analysis of devices, Internet of Things, Bluetooth, with Wi-Fi, etc. I'm a researcher and a professor at the University of Seville, so I'm working with students, and I have several certifications that were awarded to me, and I'm also responsible for OWASP Seville, which is an association, the World Association, and we have the chapter in Seville is led by me, and we teach what we do to different people. For this presentation, we're not going to talk about vulnerability or exploiting or anything sensitive, but I'm going to talk about tests and things from an academical point of view, so no failure analysis has been conducted for that. So that's the disclaimer. So auditing for mobile devices. I like to do this because probably some of you have conducted mobile devices auditing. Some people may have not. So let me talk about OWASP. OWASP is a world organization devoted to security. They started with a web application, and now we're working on mobile application. So OWASP, like I said before, is a world organization that provides us with tools for our auditing processes and to implement security controls for our applications. So as you can see, here is the top 10 of the tools. So the 10 most regular applications, and they are updated by OWASP, and these are the most frequent devices or tools for this kind of applications. So for those of us working in hacking and pen testing, etc., one of the guides to follow is the OWASP testing guide that has published its 4th edition. As you can see, they talk about control, and the controls are categorized, cookies, sessions, etc. And each section allows us to see how controls are done. For example, if we have a kind of control for cookies, for example, or the kind of sensitivity of the cookie, if I can get information from cookies, this is presented by OWASP in this guide, and this allows us to see how this control can be organized. Also, as you can see on the screen, on the left, on your right, says the speaker, what we call black box testing. So OWASP specifies the kind of auditing you're conducting, and according to the type of auditing, how you will implement the control. What is interesting for us, and which is more updated, is the mobile security devices. OWASP started studying websites, and everything today is moving to the mobile world. And for that, we also have the top 10, so 10 most known units for mobile applications. Apart from that, like I said before, the same guide for websites has been published for mobile. But it is a little bit different. This guide is a little bit different, because in OWASP Mobile, this section, we have different categories of control. We have the first tier, the basic level, which allows us to conduct certain controls of the application. The second tier is more demanding in terms of security. And then we also have a level for reverse energy, engineering things, So depending on the kind of device we are auditing, we should be applying one set of controls or another. For example, applications to know where ATMs are or the institutions that are closer to me are. So the demands in terms of auditing control and etc. will be not as strict as the applications for the banking system. So depending on the kind of application we're using, we will be applying some kind of controls or another one. So on the guide, you will find 2 columns, and the columns show you the kind of controls to be conducted. So you can have you have a tick on the right column, and depending on the level of application or the kind of application, you will be applying one kind of control or the other. So these are the main controls, but I would like to focus on 5 kinds of control. Why is that? If one application has these 5 controls, it will be difficult for us to continue auditing, because the auditor will have a lot of obstacles. So first control is SSL pinning, root detection, anti-tampering, debug mode detection, and obfuscated code. And also anti-tampering. Anti-tampering is a verification unit to verify that the unit will not be modified. Now, obfuscated codes mean something simple. It is to say, I have an application, I have its class, features, etc., and instead of naming it in an obvious way, for example, see the key, the password, this will be replaced by letters A, B, C, D to prevent hackers to attack me. So if someone wants to attack this application and this feature, numbers and letters, the code will be more difficult to decipher. Then we have root detection, this section. Why these kinds of controls are applied? When we have a rooted device, the ambos, meaning this is the set of files where the application is being activated, is like a box. And if we don't have a root in the mobile device, we will not be able to analyze these files. So if I only have a root detection control, if I don't have this root detection control, I will not be able to access these files. Also debug, if I cannot have access to this, but if I can debug the application to see how the application evolves and its registry, I will be able to see how it works. So if I don't have the debug, attacks are easier. And lastly, SSL pinning, which is actually the most difficult for us auditors. Because at the end of the day, we need to apply the device, the static code, but we need to see what the communications are, and we have to make it go through a specific point. So we need, even if we have a certificate in the application, meaning, according to this scheme, if I'm the attacker, I'm in the middle, I cheated the application and say, I can break your communication. If this certificate that arrives in the application, which is a malware that I put in the middle, if the application was able to really analyze the certificate, and if it was possible for the device to see this is not a good certificate, so communication will be stopped. So this is the scheme we must apply. So I established communication, and once I verified the first communication, if I'm able to verify the certificate, and the certificate is not the one I have in store, communication ends. And lastly, in terms of anti-tampering, which is also related to integrity checking or something like that. This is used by CPVs or ATMs, actually. If you open it, everything will be erased. So anti-tampering uses a similar concept. If you run an application under Android, you should have a signed certificate. If I verify the developer certificate, and if this certificate is not exactly the same as the one that was the original, I cannot continue using the application. So the problem is this is very difficult, because either I modify the function or I steal the certificate from the developer, which is extremely difficult. Having said this, and this is how we are going to conduct auditing, kind of controls to be applied, and we were talking about the 5 most important ones, but the idea is to optimize things. Why is that? Let me give you an example of a chart of an auditing. I have 5 days for auditing a mobile application. Estimates are half day to prepare the environment, 2.5 days or 3 days for testing, and then I will have 1.5 more days or 2 days to come up with a report. That's the ideal case for a 5-day auditing process. But what happens in reality? So you have an auditor, and he or she will be preparing the environment for 1 or 1.5 days. So 1.5 days, 2 days for controls, and then the report cannot be touched upon because the report will be the same as before. But what is the problem? Quality and time. Because at the end of the day, you devote time to prepare the environment for audit, but controls, I mean, you will have less time for tests. You will only have 1.5 days. So 1.5 days to prepare the environment, and then 1.5 days to tests. So the quality of the auditing will be reduced because I will not have time to verify all the controls. So in my experience, in my professional experience, why does this happen? This happens because each application is a world in and of itself. So we have an application using the GRM system, or some of the libraries are used only for REM, or I can say, or I can see that certain versions, the application doesn't run for 6.0, and this application will only be used for 7.0 version on. So each application is a world in and of itself. I need to prepare the environment for that audit specifically. So this was the introduction of my presentation, because I wanted to focus on how we prepare the environment. I've been working with a customer for 7 months, so we have auditings once a week, and we need to optimize time. So but sometimes the problem is that you need to use time not to optimize controls and everything, but to prepare the environment. This is when my application comes in place. Make environment Android tools, M.E.A.T. So we are able to create an environment that will be adapted to the application we want to audit. So this is the test. When we run the tool, this is the homepage of the tool. We have two options when we start the audit or do something else. So we want to start the audit. So the first thing we are asked is the kind of environment we want to work with. If we want to continue an emulated environment or a real environment, and depending on the kind of application, we can raise Android, say, 6, 7, or 8. We can use this Android version. So we are allowed to decide what kind of environment we want. So what is the environment we will be opting for? Well, it depends. It depends on what? It depends on the kind of applications I have. Like I said before, our application have libraries that are run in REM, so we need to use a physical device. But we might have, depending on the version of our physical device, is 6.0. So the application is for the following version, so we need to use an emulated environment. So you have emulated devices or physical devices. So everything is possible with our application. What is the following question we are asked? We are asked if you want your application to be patched with FRIDA. So let me give you an introduction of FRIDA. FRIDA is a hooking tool. What is hooking? Hooking, hook, Captain Hook, actually, so is to cling to a process, to hook a process. So with this hooking tool, I can modify it or cling to the process, modify the function I'm interested in, and change its results. To do that, we have a tool, the widely spread tool called FRIDA, which allows us to enter a process, modify the process to obtain another result. So now, for you, in order to show you a demo, let me show you. An application, once you open it, you will get a message, root detection. So what I want to do is to bypass this root detection. So when I open this up, a message pop in, and with this message, the application will shut down, but I don't want the application to shut down or exit, but I don't want to exit. I want to continue using. I want to hook in this function. How do I hook in this function? I open a terminal and I say, FRIDA, I launch a JavaScript file, and I said, feature, click instead of system exit. I asked this not to do anything because the feature is changed. I launched FRIDA, and I said, okay, on click was modified. So because this was modified, I can go back to the application, you detect this, and you can continue. This is hooking the process using FRIDA. So what happens? FRIDA is a very useful tool, but there is, however, FRIDA presents us with objections, very basic elements for mobile audits. So, but this application has been put in a terminal. For example, skipping the SSL pinning function with a simple command. Objection allows me to patch as well the application. And why is it this APK, I mean, not the application. I can patch the APK. I have a root device. I can launch a FRIDA survey, a process for the hooking, but I need to have the rooted device before. But if the device has hook detection, nothing can be done. So we can use a library that is injected into the application to be able to execute it. So this allows me to patch this APK and use other option, debug or network security office or something else. and add this setup. So when the menu asks me, do you want to patch the application with Frida and install objection and use hooking for the application, yes or no? But also I would like to add network security conflict, because from version 7 of Android on, if I want to make an application to go through the proxy, if this is not included in the application, nothing will be done. This was implemented by Google, Android 7 version on, but this is not very secure, actually, because the idea is to add within the Android manifest, which is our main file with the statement of all the application, and we add security setup of application. The following thing to do is to add this file. Okay? But on top of that, the file, and this is the example given by Google, for you to add this security specificity. And we need to indicate which certificate used for each activity. The problem is that we can modify it. We can say that the file is going to be this and take all the certificates of the user system. So this is automatically done by the application. What else can we do? We can activate debug in order to debug the process and the applications are never. If the debug flag is not activated, this function will not be activated either. So if I select this option, they add Android debuggable equal true. And they say, if the tool asks me if I want to set up the APK within the device and launch objection. So at the end of the day, what I'm doing in an audit is next, step by step. And that's how I have an environment to start the auditing in only 5 minutes. And like I said before, it will launch objection in the terminal. We completely delete the verification of SSL pinning for the application. And lastly, you can raise a proxy, because if we want to analyze the application, we have objection or hooking, the patched version, but we can stop the communication of this application. So proxy is raised bug. This is a public tool, so we have this. So we don't have the established setup, so you need to start this at the beginning for this to listen to the different phases. So this is the basic process of an audit. But more functions or features are possible. Static analysis with the M.E.A.T tool. I can also have the opportunity to root the device and to launch a cells that will allow me to have access to the terminal, and the terminal will be, in the end, also rooted. So this is a virtual OVA for you to see how we can have access.
Ponga así. Ahora, aquí.
Okay. It's I mean, it's behind me. It's going to be difficult, but okay. So we have the terminal here. And we have to launch the M.E.A.T command. So there's an introduction here, and then, like I said before, you have these two possibilities from the beginning: delete or other options. So I asked the system to see the first option. So once the audit starts, the question will be, what do you want? What kind of emulator do you want? A physical. Okay, so we will use Android 6. Enter. And here we are with a terminal, with an Android terminal. Now, what happens? Then the tool will ask me if I want to patch the process I want to audit with Frida. And then a question is asked. Do you add to this APK another security feature for proxy? Yes. Do you want to debug this application as well? Yes. And then the question is, what kind of application, or what application, which application? Sorry, I couldn't see that very well because it's behind me, so I have to start over again. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we are. The terminal has been shown, so the following steps are not made up until the device and absolutely detects that the device is connected to the SSL system. So this should be activated because the application takes the architecture of our device to patch the APK. So depending on the kind of reading we will have, it will take one part of the other. So using Frida cache, yes. So configuration, or I mean setup, Frida. Yes. Now, so I have the Mega 5 set up, and it is patching things. It takes a little while, and then after patching things, the question is, do you want to set up and install the APK in the device? Okay. So the next screen shows up, meaning the APK has been patched. So you want to install this APK in the device? Yes. And what happens here? To avoid failure, it uninstalls and then installs it again, and then they launch it. Why is that? Because now the question will be if I want detection. After patching the APK of the detection, it starts to think and wait until it sees that everything has been connected, even with the objections. And the only thing to do is indicate Android SSL pinning, disable. Okay.
So if you see, it has found an SSLP function and it's skipped it. So we can go back to the terminal. And now it tells me, do you need to send a process, to launch a process? I say yes. So it skips the verb. This is the verb I've mentioned. Well, if you have a license, you should change, save changes, but I open project. And I just need to tell proceed in options to listen in all interfaces. If I write here test, and I go over to the burp, and I've skipped the SSL pinning. I have everything activated, and it takes a while, but then it shows up here. Maybe there isn't internet connection right now. Because indeed I am without internet connection. I will not type in the Wi-Fi password in case anybody's there with the camera ready. I'm sorry. So if I get that connection, there it is. There it is, test and test. So it has skipped the SSLP. Had there been a failure, I would see here that there is no connection with the host because the certificate hasn't worked, but this is not the case. So you have the answer here. So here I have skipped the SSL pinning, and if we had the if we had a detention root, then it would also skip it. So this is all about next, and I've set up the terminals, and but what I have also implemented is that in other options it tells me whether I want a static analysis or if I want to root the device. If we opt by static, I said yes. And then it opens up this tab with M.E.A.T. I have this analysis with a static M.E.A.T. where it will set up a portfolio with that analysis, and what's good about this is it will create a file bus XP where we will see the potential vulnerabilities. So this is the first approach. We have the source code of the application, and if we want to see the files in that device, it asks me, do you want to route the emulated device? I said yes, and now I have the terminal, which is root within the emulator. So I have the root terminal, I have the proxy, and I can do the audit. So this can be 5-10 minutes rather than a day and a half that auditors may need to generate the environment. So back to the presentation. As conclusions, tool, and here's the link, and I think in Tech web you have the link published to the GitHub where you can download it. You can load the tools. It's a bit heavy, but you can load it, and it's in 4 parts. It's OVA, and you can import it in VirtualBox or otherwise.
También se está trabajando ya, bueno, al final, son cosas que tú quieres ir
So
metiendo,
these are
pero
things that you
pues el
want
tiempo que se va acercando la charla y al final
introduce.
para
So
un
there were
poco
things
porque
that I
quieres
wanted
cortar
to
y
go
no
further, but
seguir.
the talk
He pensado también en
was
más
getting
cosas,
closer and closer. So
por ejemplo, como puede ser Drowser,
I was thinking
¿vale? Que al
about
final el
introducing
dispositivo- el emulador que tenga
Drowser, so
Drowser,
at the
o el
end,
dispositivo físico,
the
si lo tiene también, se pudiera
emulator,
conectar en otro terminal y
or the
hacer pruebas.
device could connect to another terminal and do
Podríamos
tests.
tener MOSF,
We
que
could
puede ser una
have
herramienta
MOVSF,
divertida
which
mejor
is
para hacer análisis estático,
a
incluso
fun
te
tool
permite el
to
tema de
do
análisis dinámico.
static analysis.
Y también te permite, o sea, lo que estoy buscando es con Frida
And it
crear un
also
fichero
allows
para
you to set up
eliminarse el
a
tema
file
del anti-tampering.
to remove the anti-tampering.
¿Qué pasa? También he pensado que una OVA
What
es
else?
un poquito latoso de bajárselo,
I
sobre todo por
also
el tema del
thought
tamaño.
that the OVA is a
pensando en
bit
hacer
complex to download because
un
of the
Docker
size
o un
issue. So
fichero
I'm
de
thinking
instalación,
about making
¿vale?
a Docker
Donde
or
se
an
explique
installation
dónde se
file
puede-
where
cómo
you
se puede
can
instalar esta
explain
herramienta
how
paso
to
por paso,
install
un
this
Docker,
tool step
Docker
by
container, al
step,
final lo podéis instalar.
or a container
Lo que
Docker
pasa
which
también
you
es que
can
hay ciertas
install.
configuraciones que
But
son
there
a
are
nivel
certain
de entorno
configurations
gráfico
that
como el proxy,
like the
tanto
in the
en el
graphic
emulador
environment,
como-
such as the
como en el-
proxy,
en la
both
máquina,
in the
que lo
emulator and
tienes que
in the
hacer a mano.
machine, you have to
Entonces,
do
bueno,
manually.
hacer un Docker, instalar ciertas herramientas y el resto,
So
pues hacer un manual para que
you
la
have to
gente
do a Docker, and for the
lo haga,
rest,
¿vale? Y
to
y
do a
lo pueda
manual
instalar
so
en un
that people
entorno
can do
suyo
it,
propio, a lo mejor,
and they
porque
can install it
me
perhaps
decía
in their
compañero
own
también que,
environment.
bueno,
Because
a lo
a
mejor quieres
friend was
Ubuntu, quieres
saying,
Debian,
maybe
vale,
you want
¿sabes?
Debian.
Pasa que, bueno, también digo que en Debian yo
But
lo probé, hay librerías que fallan.
I
Por
tested
eso cogí este
Debian
entorno, lo que hice en una OVA, y
there are
simplemente
libraries
te
that
coges
fail, so that's why I think
te
these
descargas
other
la OVA y lo
options
puedes
are
empezar a usar, ¿no?
are
No tienes que
better. You
configurar
download
nada
the
más.
OVA and then you can start
Y
using
bueno,
it.
como finalmente, pues
So
lo que quería crear
finally,
por
what I
experiencia
wanted
es una
to
herramienta
set up
que nos
was
sirva
a tool
para ahorrar
that's
tiempo
good to
de
save time
esta auditoría, ¿vale? Que
in
sirva
this
un poco
audit,
para que este tipo de auditorías de dispositivos móviles al final
so
no
that
perdamos
these
cierto tiempo
audits
solamente
doesn't force
en
us
crear
to
el
waste
entorno.
time in just generating the
Bueno, al final
environment.
también la licencia la he puesto en Jihad con licencia GNU, porque al final
I have
tampoco
this in
termine
Jihad with the
entorno que no se
GNU
debe, ni
license.
alguien que intenta promocionar por ahí. Y bueno, sobre todo es una herramienta, como he dicho, la he puesto
Above
pública
all,
para que la gente la use.
It's a
¿vale?
tool
Es
that I've
verdad
made public,
que
I
seguramente algún
publish for
fallo
people
habrá.
to use. There
O
will
hay
be
alguien que diga, pues a mí no
some
me
bug, or there
gusta
will be
esta
people
herramienta,
who say, I don't like this
o
tool.
esto, me gustaría mejor tener esta cosa.
I would rather
por
have
cualquier
this or this
crítica
other thing. Well,
constructiva.
any constructive
propuesta de mejora,
criticism that you
perfecto,
have or any
¿vale?
proposals for
Pues mira, Paco,
improvement,
yo
please,
creo
they're very
que
welcome.
si pones este menú,
So, like for
o pones
instance,
esta
if you
opción,
have this menu or if you
podría
have
ser
this
más
option, that
interesante, o
would be more
podríamos,
interesting.
se podría hacer otra cosa.
If we
Bueno,
could do
se
something
ve y
else.
se podría añadir.
Yeah, I would
Vale.
consider everything.
Y bueno, fin. Yo
And
creo
that's
que
it.
la ponencia.
So, that's all for my talk.
Muchas gracias, Paco.
Thank you very much, Paco.
¿Preguntas?
Questions?
Tampoco está bien.
Still no questions?
Sí, sí.
Muy, de mucha vergüenza.
A very shy room
¿Una
here.
pregunta?
Bueno, este año el método de bajar, yo creo.
I think this
Si quieres
method
subo el
of
micro,
bringing people
A alguien
to...
le da vergüenza preguntar.
Is somebody embarrassed about coming, walking all the way down to the microphones to ask questions?
Pues muchísimas gracias, Paco.
Okay, thanks very much, Paco.